Welcome to the Journal podcast from the Chartered Insurance Institute, a place for thought-provoking discussion from the world of insurance and beyond. I'm Laura Wolfe, Head of Careers and Talent at the Chartered Insurance Institute. In this episode, we're going to be discussing CII apprenticeships as part of National Apprenticeship Week 2026. We'll be exploring the world of apprenticeships within the insurance profession from both the apprentice and employer perspectives. Our guests today break down what an apprentice scheme within the profession looks like, what it involves day to day, the opportunities it offers, and the impact it can have on early career development. So joining me on the podcast today is Davin Potter, Underwriting Manager from Aviva, Archie Taylor-Salmon and Ollie Gilmore, both underwriting apprentices also from Aviva. So thank you all so much for joining me on the podcast today. I'm just going to start with you, Gavin. So what does an apprenticeship scheme within the profession look like and what does it involve?
Okay, so it is a structured intro to insurance. Aviva has a very, very structured and well laid out arrangement for apprentices. So they have a variety of tasks. They get to know different parts of the business. And really crucially, they get to learn loads. They get to have time to learn. They get to have time to study. They learn all around the business. They get to know different people. But really crucially, they get to bring their own ideas to life. And it's something, I'm so pro apprenticeship. I think it's brilliant. I've had Archie in my team in the past and I've got Ollie currently. They're two great examples of what they bring to Aviva and what Aviva gives to them as well.
Thanks, Gavin. And Archie, why did you choose an apprenticeship with this employer and what made the organisation stand out to you?
Obviously Aviva, they're a big brand that everyone knows in the UK, obviously being one of the largest in the UK. And it's just a brand that you see all the time, you see on adverts, and it's just great to be a part of and proud to work for, really.
Brilliant. And Ollie, did you have anything to add to that about why you chose to work for Aviva?
Yeah, so obviously building on what Archie said, really, it's one of the biggest insurers, if not the biggest insurer in the UK. So obviously that gives you exposure to some of the best underwriters within the industry and really good opportunities to develop just due to the size of the company, really. And there's so many different opportunities that you have exposure to, very similar to Archie, really, in that sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I just wondered, how have you found it whilst you've been working within the insurance sector?
Definitely, it's been a really positive experience since starting work within the insurance sector. I think there's just so many different ways that you can develop, so many different skills that you can pick up whilst working within the industry, speaking to some really interesting people as well, both internally and externally. I think going back to Aviva that we're working for, I think having exposure to such a wide network within the organisation, some of the best sort of underwriters within the industry, really good opportunity to develop those skills. But sort of going back to the industry as well, it's really a people industry. And I think if you're the kind of person that enjoys developing with those relationships and seeing the mutual benefits of those relationships, the value that you can provide to others and in turn how they can also support you as well. I think if you're someone who finds that rewarding, then I think it's definitely an industry that you should consider.
Thank you. That was a brilliant answer. And Archie, what has been your experience with that so far, internally within your organisation, or whether you've engaged with any other kind of networking opportunities?
Yeah, I think the industry is very relationship based. So you're always constantly out, or even internally, you have internal socials or external socials, meeting new people, networking events. There's so much going on. So on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or even Thursdays, there's like those different days you can be doing things. The social aspect's great. It's very relationship based, and even if you're not, it's also very technical as well. So there's a great mix and there's great work-life balance. So you're not always sat at your desk. You could be out, and like we said, relationships. So you need to be out and about rather than just sat at your desk and building those personal connections. So the social aspect is great.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I completely agree with that. And from your perspective, Gavin, what made you look for an apprentice? And how quickly did the apprentices add value to your organisation?
So what we look for, people that are hungry to learn, hungry to develop themselves. These people don't always need to be sort of really loud people. We have a real mix of different people. The crucial thing is around the hunger to learn, the hunger to get on. There's an element of being self-sufficient. I think communication skills are really, really good. So Ollie and Archie, I know, will sort of talk amongst themselves and support other newer apprentices that we brought on. And in terms of how quickly they developed, I would say really, really quickly. I talked earlier about the structure that Aviva offers. I can't underestimate how fantastic that is, really. Particularly if I think about Archie, I had him in my team about a year into the role. And what's really good, he pivoted from being a renewal underwriter to new business underwriter so brilliantly. But he'd spent the year learning the basics, but learn those basics really, really well. And Ollie's new to my team a few months in. I see the same behaviours. They are both brilliant at asking us questions, talking to different people around the team, different experiences, amazing additions to the team.
Oh, that is brilliant and really good to hear. So I'm going to move on to Archie and Ollie now. So I just would like to ask each of you, if that's okay, what does your day-to-day look like within your apprenticeship? So Archie, if you'd like to go first, obviously you're in the new business team. Could you tell us sort of what the day-to-day looks like for you?
Yeah, so I start my day, I sort of look through my emails and clear through my inbox and get rid of that sort of any excess emails. I've got like a clean slate to work on and I've got sort of a clear mind. And then as an apprentice, obviously we still have our own workload to deal with. So I start the day by looking through my quotes, looking at what I've got to do, any new ones that have come in, and sort of try and work out a priority list of sort of what one's better to look at first, what one you've got a better chance at, or what one needs more time. And then that's sort of how my day sort of progresses, obviously, alongside any meetings that pop up and any things that I've got to join. That obviously that fits in as and when, but it's prioritising my quotes and then to making a start as early as possible, getting those early conversations in internally and externally and going from there.
Okay, brilliant. I just wondered as well, what was your background before you became an apprentice? So sort of what was your career route when you left school?
So I finished sixth form and done my A-levels and then went straight into the apprenticeship. So I never done anything other than that. I did work a little bit, but that was with like my dad, like doing sort of a construction job. So nothing as formal as this. And that's helped obviously the apprenticeship because I've had the mix of studying at college and sixth form, but then also working on the weekends with my dad. So that obviously helps the mix because an apprenticeship is exactly that, working while studying. So obviously I did mention before in my day-to-day that obviously that's the day-to-day doing the quotes, but then we have an allocated day of the week for studying. So obviously my day's a Friday. So on a Friday, it will look completely differently. I try not to open my emails or try not to open my workload and just sort of go straight to the studying. Yeah, I think that's helped massively.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for that. And Ollie, what about you in the existing business team?
You're working in an existing business and you've got sort of a caseload. I guess you get more of a longer term view. So you can be sort of looking towards, obviously we're in February now, so you can be looking towards March and April time, maybe a little bit more longer term. So obviously sort of working out what needs to be done on certain cases. Obviously some cases need more work done than others. Internal conversations that may need to be had and sort of sign off, things like that. And you can sort of plan ahead a little bit there. Obviously external meetings as well. So getting up, seeing brokers, if you've got a large case coming up, or if you know that you've got more than one case with a specific broker, then you may want to build that relationship. That's something that will always be a benefit as well. So not necessarily on a day to day, but looking for opportunities like going on surveys, for example, and just getting a wider kind of view of what we need to understand risks as underwriters. So just those kinds of things really. And then like Archie said, obviously we have dedicated study time as well. So depending on sort of when that is, those days I'll look at my apprenticeship side of things and make sure that I'm spending enough time on getting everything done in that service as well.
Brilliant. And do you enjoy that kind of relationship building side of it when you say you go out on the broker visits and get to meet new people? Do you find that difficult in terms of confidence being like a new sector?
No, I think everyone generally is quite understanding in the sense of if you are an apprentice, I think as long as you can sort of build out that relationship, I think that's a transferable skill really, regardless of experience that you've got within the sector. I think if you're able to build those relationships, it makes those things a lot easier. Obviously, developing your technical sort of knowledge and understanding, that's something that comes with being an apprentice. Obviously, if you've got those strong foundations, those relationships, both internal and external, I think it actually makes that side of things a lot easier.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's a really good answer. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on. I would go to Archie first, but just sort of what skills have you developed that you think are most useful to the organisation whilst you've been within your apprenticeship?
Yeah. So two of the skills I think I've learned, obviously not that I didn't have them already, but just develop further, is time management as one, because especially being on the new business side, you get urgent quotes coming in all the time and you have to turn the dial and sort of switch your attention to certain things at different times. So having the correct time management and allocating yourself time of when you need to do certain things and sort of learning how to prioritize things is just so key, because otherwise you'll end up just getting a bit muddled up and trying to do too many things at once and you'll lose track of things and then you'll end up forgetting things and it just will obviously spiral. So time management is definitely one. And then linked to that is definitely multitasking as well, because there's just multiple things you need to be doing at once. You need to adapt to that skill and be adaptable in the role and sort of being able to switch to one thing, then quickly switch to the other thing, or do multiple things at once, because you might be looking at a case, you might need to be referring to someone, you've just got to be equipped to respond and on your toes really. So they're probably two skills I'd say. And then obviously linked to that is just relationships as well. So being able to communicate with people, easily speak to people, like on these broker meetings and stuff like that. So they're probably the 3 skills, I'd say.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Thank you. And what about you, Ollie? What skills do you think you've developed that are the most useful to Aviva?
Yeah, I'd say definitely time management, organisational sort of skills in terms of balancing that work study requirement. Obviously, within the work requirement, there's multiple things that you need to balance, as we kind of touched on, really. External, internal meetings, and different things that might pop up within your caseload. So obviously, you've got to stay on top of those things, but at the same time, staying on top of the study side of things as well. So definitely it's sort of sharpened my time management skills, I'd say. I think also being accountable as well, of knowing areas that you need to develop in and sort of taking it on yourself really to speak to the right people or develop in certain ways, which you might have to think outside the box sometimes. But if you don't know something, being confident enough to ask, I'd say is definitely a skill really that I think you learn through being an apprentice. Sort of really does help your development. So yeah.
I would like to add something to that, actually. I think there are probably some skills you guys don't realise you've developed really quickly. And that is your internal networking. So you think about the resources Aviva has to offer. You guys probably use so much of those without even realising. And you guys and the other apprentices are very, very good at that, to use that resource to learn every time. So don't underestimate that.
Thank you, Gavin. And this sort of moves into the next question really nicely, actually. So what level of support do you get from your employer? And obviously from Gavin, your line manager who's here today.
Yeah, so obviously I think with support-wise, you get weekly catch-ups or monthly catch-ups whenever you need, sort of just to touch base and sort of speak on your apprenticeship whenever you need to. But I think at Aviva anyway, the approach that they take is more of an open door approach. So you have that support whenever you need. So if there's something that's sort of going wrong or something that you can't handle, or you just need some time to be reallocated to, maybe you need some more time to study, or maybe you need to put studying on a hold for a week or something like that. It's just that approach, and like having an approachable manager sort of say, look, hi Gavin, but I'm just a bit stuck at the minute, or I'm struggling workload wise, and just that sort of open door approach as and when you need it, just catch up. So you might have a monthly catch up, but there's no reason to wait for a monthly catch up. Just you speak to them in the office or call the team's call them, anything. So
just to tack onto that, actually, I think you touched on that, Archie, and I mentioned earlier, communication is really, really key here. So I know when I first took Archie onto my team, I think the workload was sort of taking some of Archie's valuable studying time. So we took a step back, reflected, and actually ring-fenced a lot more time. But I think both Archie and Ollie appreciate that time is dynamic. So there are times where it kind of goes both ways. Sometimes actually it's an urgent task that he's doing, but actually there's also further time for perhaps if exams are coming up, they can have a bit more time away from the workload to smash those exams.
So both of you are currently studying for the diploma in insurance and are currently on M92 Business and Finance and the MO5 Law module. How are you both finding those at the moment?
I think they're really good because they give you the technical side to it rather than just the in-depth working. But let's be honest, it's no easy task. They are very difficult. So they do come with some struggles, but I think a lot of it comes down to like allocating your time and separating your workload from the studying and being able to section yourself and make sure that you're actually having the right time to look at and review it and do your coursework and stuff like that. So obviously you've got to do your coursework, you've got to need an exam, and you've got to work. So it's hard to juggle. But as long as you're allocating your time and you're being strict and you're sort of not selfish in a bad way, but selfish in a good way, that you're sort of putting your right time aside and putting the work to aside and saying, right, now it's time to study and actually focusing. Once you do that, once you sort of master that ability, it does become a lot easier. But they're good at the minute. I'm enjoying business and finance while I'm doing it at the minute. It's obviously very mathsy, very calculation heavy. So it's good. It gives you an insight to maybe not something that we see every day, because obviously some of the calculations that are in it are to do with what goes on elsewhere in the organisation, or like maybe like all the board, it talks about the board and the chief executive and stuff like that. So you're hearing that side of the organisation that you don't really hear about day to day, getting an idea of what they do and their tasks and how that affects and comes down to me in terms of like strategy and like ratios that I deal with. So yeah, really good.
Thank you. And how are you finding MO5 insurance law?
So obviously, you have to sort of manage your time. There's a lot of things that you maybe wouldn't necessarily know as sort of common sense. Sometimes it can feel like everything you're kind of learning from scratch at times with such a sort of a subject that you don't necessarily come across every day. But I think what kind of got me through that is just understanding that it's, it's a part of the role and whether you see it every day or not. So I think that definitely helps in terms of engagement with the study. I think having support from the employer as well has been like really key, to be honest. like we said before, having that ring fence time to actually sort of get your head down and study and, sort of work on coursework, revision, stuff like that. I think the main objective really as being an apprentice is to develop, and there's different ways that you need to develop as part of being an apprentice. One of those is your qualifications, it's obviously your technical skills and everything else. So I think once you kind of understand that it's part of the job and you really engage with it, I think that definitely helps with the studying side of things.
Thank you. And Gavin, as a line manager, how do you balance your role with supporting the apprentices? Do you find that can be difficult or challenging?
That's a really good question. I think early doors it was. I'm a fairly recent sort of people manager. But actually, again, this is a great area I've learned from both Archie and Ollie, that they need that bit more support in some ways. In other ways, they're really, really autonomous, which is brilliant. But we learn quickly on that actually they need that time ring fenced. And that is, I said to both of them, various times, that time for you to study, that 1 day a week you both get, it's absolutely ring fenced. Unless there's something, really, really crucial work-wise, it might be, but you move a day from, whatever day of the week they study, but you still get that day. That's been an interesting learning sort of curve for me, really.
Okay, thank you. So, Ollie, what would you say to an employer thinking about taking on an apprentice?
Yeah, I'd say, maybe I have a little bit of bias here, but I'd say do it, because I think one of the most important things within sort of any workforce really is having that different levels of experience. I think if you've got people who are new to the industry, people who have got, slightly more experience in the industry, and everyone that kind of falls in between those two categories, I think that, that could only really be a benefit. You've got new insights into new ways of doing things, but then you've also got the established ways of doing things as well. And I think you get the best levels of productivity when you can get somewhere in the middle of that. So yeah, I think you might have to, in the short term, and the apprentices might need some more support, especially in terms of studying and workloads and stuff like that. And there may be some teething problems, but I think in the long term, it really does pay off, just because I think that having those different levels of experience can really benefit sort of everyone within the organisation.
I really agree. Again, probably a bit biased, but I do agree. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, really, because whoever you're employing as the apprentice, you're getting that commitment from them that they're willing to learn, they're willing to develop. And it's a fresh start, especially if it's someone that's just coming out of sixth form or college or something like that. You can sort of mould that employee into the perfect employee you want them to be, because you're teaching them your way to do things from the get-go. So yeah, it just seems like a bit of a no-brainer. It's almost like your own little project, and you can mould them into who you want them to be and how you want them to learn. And it's not just they'll learn from everyone else from on the job and around other employees, and it just seems very beneficial to me and for an employer as well.
Yeah, they're really good answers. Thank you. And I completely agree. We've got a graduate within our team, and I personally find it really rewarding. Going back to what Gavin said about sort of giving back and helping those going forward and kind of developing them and getting them across around the organisation. So Gavin, what's your advice to employers who might still be a bit unsure about taking on apprenticeships, and why should employers invest in these apprenticeship schemes?
Another excellent question. I think there's no question around the value that these apprentices bring, not just in terms of a resource, but actually their fresh ideas, their fresh perspectives, collaboration. I said before, I've learned plenty from these guys, plus other apprentices in the team. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I think both these guys have sort of touched on what they've brought to this. And I think just developing these newcomers to this brilliant profession we work in is just a fantastic thing to do.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So, Archie, what would your advice be to anyone who was unsure about their career routes after leaving school, or were thinking about a career in insurance? What would you advise?
Yeah, it's probably biased too, as we've already said earlier, but definitely I think I'm a real advocate for the apprenticeships. It's the opportunity to learn on the job while studying, getting the experience of being around a team, full-time job. Also, you get the benefits of a full-time salary and all those good benefits of being already in the work. So I always favoured it because I'm studying now, but I didn't want to completely solely study. I sort of wanted to get on the career ladder, make a start and sort of work in an organisation. So if you're like similar to that and you want the same benefits, then yeah, I'd say definitely do it. Just apply where you can.
Okay, thank you. And Ollie, I'll ask you now the same thing as well. What would your advice be to anyone that was thinking about doing an apprenticeship within the insurance sector?
Yeah, I'd say even if you've got a remote interest, I think it's definitely worth looking into it. I think, like we said, with a little bit of bias maybe, I think it's a really good decision. I think when you compare it to your alternatives, I think it stacks up very well, especially if you're someone who's hungry to get stuck in and get involved in sort of real life work, really, something that feels quite meaningful and purposeful quite early on. I think there's so many different ways that you can develop for an apprenticeship. And then you also get the positives of getting your professional qualifications as well. So I think there's a lot of positives to doing so. I'd say time requirements, it's a job and it's also studying. So there's definitely those considerations as well. But I think if you've got an interest in what you're doing, it really does make things a lot easier. And I think the employers put a lot of support in place as well for those apprentices to make those challenges a little bit easier.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant.
Brilliant. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Journal podcast. You can find useful links on the CII apprenticeship scheme in the show notes and related articles on the Journal website, along with further podcasts. Please like, review and subscribe. And until next time, goodbye.